Hello everyone, this is Shahim Rahman, and today my project is about a prototype pattern. Introduction to prototype patterns. A prototype pattern is a creational design pattern used to create new design by cloning the existing one instead of just the installation them from the scratch. It also helps reduce object creating cost by copying the pre-existing objects. It's also ensure that cloned objects retain the same properties and behaviors as the original. Intent of the prototype pattern. It enables creating new objects by copying an existing objects, reducing that need for complex instantiation logic. Promotes objects reuse by cloning pre-existing instances, ensures efficiency and consistency. It also decouples objects creation from the client but allowing flexible and dynamic installation. Useful when multiple similar objects are required, by instanting each from the scratch resource is intensive. Reduce the overhead of the installation and also configure by duplicating the prototypes. Here we're going to talk about when we should use the prototype patterns. So we can use it if the creation is too costly, it will help us reduce the cost. We can also do it if most of the objects are similar, or we can use this pattern if we don't want to create the any project from the scratch. We can just use the previous one for this, and it's also help to avoid any complicated project. We can also use if it's like decouple. So it's mainly used for easy projects. So any kind of hard or any complicated project, we can reduce or avoid that by using the prototype pattern. Here is the structure of the prototype pattern. So first we have the prototype. This diagram represents the pattern, the structure using the three components we are using. So the prototype is the base interface or abstract class that declares the clone method. It does not have any attribute, but it defines the contract of cloning, but does not implement it. Next, we have the concept prototype. This is a class that implements the prototype interface. It defines the clone method which duplicate itself. Objects of the class can be cloned used instead of being instantiated manually. And lastly, we have the client. And the client is the part of the application that requests a new objects by calling clone instead of manually creating a new one. This reduces dependency on class constructor and made objects creation more flexible. Here's the application overview. So mainly in the application, we're gonna talk about pet adoption system, how and what type of pet they're gonna adopt all the information. Any users can browse the pet shop, or they can look for any kind of pet if we have it in the store. They can also clone any existing pet profile, like they can clone the pets written from attributes and allow any kind of modification. It will just allow the users to do any kind of modification they would like. Here's the class diagram for our project. Um, so first we have the client here. The client is responsible for interacting with the pet store. So, they can create a new pet. Clone can be existing using a pet using the clone pet, and it's gonna display all the pets in the store. Next we have the pet store. So, Pet Store mainly manages the pets. The Pet Store acts as a container that holds a list of the pets. It's provide method for like add pets, so they can add a new pet to the store. It can also give option to clone pets, so clones are existing pet based on its ID, and it's also have a display pet. Display all pets. Like it's gonna display everything the pet we have in the store. Next we have pet. So that's gonna concentrate the prototype. And this class represent an individual pet. This implement the clone method from the prototype interface and duplicate of the pet objects. So the attributes we use in here, pet ID, so unique identification for the pet, then the name, every unique name for the pet, species, the type of like dog, cat, or any kind of pets. We also have like pet age, so they can also look for the age and also the color. So it's basically gonna give every options. Next, we is just gonna implement all the information they need, and it's gonna implement whatever choose they have chosen. I'll walk through the code. So this is we have the class part. So for mainly the class part, the prototype class is defined the clone method. It's gonna use the copy.decopy self to create the duplicate objects. And it's basically because installation a new object manually, we can reuse the existing object by decoing. Uh, so the next part is gonna show the pet class. It's inherit from prototype, meaning it can use the clone method. It contains the name, as we talked about earlier, the pet's name, species, age, color, and the display prints the pet detail. Here we have the second part of the code. So it's gonna create original pet. So a new pet object is created. It's gonna show that's the values assigned, what's the name, what type of species, and what's the color. Um, we can also modify it. So if the customer wants, they can change if anything by the cloned pet. They can change the name, the age, or the species too. So it's basically gonna um, print everything at the end, like whatever the customer chose, it's gonna give him the options to it. Here's just the screenshot that we talked about earlier. So if we chose it, it's gonna show that the original pet was Bella and it was a dog, 3 years old, a brown dog. And if the customer chooses something else, they can clone the pet. So the name changes Charlie, it's a dog and it's 1 year old. It's the consequences of prototype patterns. So it really have a faster creation than the other ones. It's reduce memory overhead, so it's really good for that. Cloning logic can be complex because when anyone wants to clone, it can be complicated. It's not really suitable for unique identify constants. Here are some real world application that we use the prototype pattern. So mainly the game development, we can use it for clone characters. So basically it's really help to develop a game. Then we have document editors. It's also like the cloning. So it's going to duplicate any kind of templates. We can just use the same template and use it like several times. Then lastly we have the UI components. So copying design is like really important. We can use this component to copy any kind of design, and if we want to modify it, it's really helpful. Here's some comparison with the other patterns with the prototype patterns. So prototype patterns is really used while cloning, so it's really feasible. The factory patterns we use it while centralizing object creation. Singleton use only for instance if needed. Builder used when creating a complex object step by step. So these are really complex than the prototype. Lastly, we have object factory. It's used when a family of related objects needs to be created. Here are some key takeaways for the prototype patterns. The prototype patterns enable efficient object duplication. It's also used when creating multiple similar projects. We can duplicate anything we want, any template or any UI model like we talked about earlier. Our pet adoption system demonstrates its practical use, so it's really easier to build with the prototype patterns. So that was it about my prototype pattern. I think it's really helpful and easier than the other patterns to do any application or any kind of projects. This one really helped me to gain a lot of knowledge about the project, and it's really easier to create the diagrams and the code. Thank you everyone for listening.